I paid $2,000 and met a person that I made $20 million with. What's that ROI? That's like, I actually think that's 1,000,000% ROI. I was 21 years old and I had just graduated college. I think this was 2009. And throughout my college experience, I had been an affiliate marketer, which meant that I was, running a full-time 6-figure a year business. And once I graduated, I had no idea what to do. No idea, right? In my mind, it's like, well, I have a business, so I'll just grow this business. I'll just double down on this thing and it'll grow. And when I graduated, I was absolutely freaking miserable because all of a sudden I realized I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea if I was gonna be able to grow this, if I'd be able to sustain this. And then the business started shrinking and getting smaller and smaller. I started losing my profits. I started worrying about it all going away. I remember one time my mom asked me, "What are you doing this week?" And I said, "Trying to pay rent." Because I was so afraid that it was all crumbling. And of course you start to mentally perpetuate that. So what I did about it was I took $25,000, which was a lot of money to me, and I joined a group of entrepreneurs that was way ahead of me. I had no business being in this room. Not really sure why they let me in. Could have been because I paid them $25,000. But I had no business being in this room. And I did it simply because I knew I needed to think differently in order for me to grow. And I knew that the strategy that I was following, the mindset that I had, the approach that I was taking was not gonna help me buy a Major League Baseball team. It was not gonna help me grow a $100 million empire. Just wasn't. I wasn't gonna get there that way. But I didn't have anybody in my life who was showing me anything different. And I live by that principle of getting into the room where you're slightly uncomfortable, of getting into the room where there are people that are not speaking the same language as you. It's one step ahead of where you are. And about 5 or 6 years ago, I was starting to see real success for the first time. This is 2013, 2014. I guess that's more years ago. But I built my first business that crossed $1 million, my first 7-figure business ever. I was 26 or 27. And it was a big check mark for me to have the $1 million business. But I had no idea how I was gonna take it to 100. Not a clue. I didn't know how I was gonna take it to $10 million. No idea. Unfortunately, at the time, there was no group around then that was a group of 7-figure or 8-figure business owners. They didn't exist. I had outgrown my peer group. In 2013, having a 7-figure business, an e-commerce business that was 7 figures, was kind of rare. So me crossing that threshold, I had to go out and say, I need a new peer group again, and I have no idea where they are. So I called Gary Vaynerchuk. No, seriously, I called Gary Vaynerchuk.
Who the fuck do you think you are?
I found out what his speaking fee was. At the time, it was $50,000. It's a lot more now. He was still famous, but not as famous as he is today. And he always stood out to me because he was this person who was 10 years older than me, 10 years ahead of me, had a similar goal. His goal is to own the New York Jets, mine Cleveland Indians, now the Cleveland Guardians. And I had no idea how I was gonna go from 1 million, like I'm pretty proud of my $1 million business. How am I gonna take this to 100? And the only way that I knew that I could ask Gary what I wanted to ask him was to have him speak at our annual event. And I started putting together the lineup for this event of all the people that I wanted to learn from, because there was no more room, meaning there was no more group, there was no more, there was no mentor to hire that I knew of to help me go from where I was to where I wanted to be. And that event became an annual event. an annual event of the entrepreneurs who were raising the temperature in the room, raising the expectation, raising the standard for everybody else who comes into the room, and seeing a peek into what it looks like to go from $1 million to $100 million, or, for me now, $10 million to $100 million. As a result of meeting the people that I met by throwing the event, I was able to go from 1 to 10. I'm still working on the 100. Right? I'm still working on having a $100 million empire. I'm still working on my plan to own a Major League Baseball team. And that's why I throw this event every year, to be around the people that stretch me and stretch the people who are like me and stretch my peer group and stretch the businesses that I've invested in and stretch my students who are on a similar journey. In this video, I want to introduce you to a couple of the people that we've invited to be at this year's event, CapCon 5. It's September 23rd and 24th in Austin, Texas. And if you're watching this before then and we still have tickets, we'd love to see you there. And if not, I still want to introduce you to some of the entrepreneurs that you might want to follow, because these are entrepreneurs that don't put out a ton of content. They don't do a lot of YouTube videos, but if you can find interviews with them, or if you can find clips that we share from when they speak at the Capitalism Conference, you'll want to pay attention to them, because they're real in the trenches entrepreneurs who have done amazing things. And I want to introduce you to a few of them. The first is Mickey Agrawal. And Mickey had 3 successful companies before she turned 40. 2 of them crossed 9 figures. One of those businesses you might be familiar with, it's called Tushy. It's that bidet adapter that you see some people put on their toilet. Simple idea, really, really profitable, like hundreds of millions of dollars worth of at least value of the company, as far as I'm aware. Another one of the companies that she started was Thinx, which is period-proof underwear. So she goes into kind of controversial areas and creates new products and new businesses that change the game in those industries. And she's become fabulously wealthy and fabulously successful and celebrated for being a leader in these spaces. The second is AJ Patel. AJ was one of my mastermind buddies years ago. I mean, when we were both in the trenches figuring this stuff out, like on the rise, running low 7-figure businesses. I met him when he was first doing about $100,000 a month, selling a couple of products on Amazon. This was like 7 businesses ago for him. He went on to build he hasn't told me the exact numbers, but I know like a mid to high 8-figure company that was mostly Amazon based. And that was his warm up. Then he went on to start Zesty Paws, which is like one of the biggest pet supply companies, I think, in like the entire e-commerce world. And then he started this other company called High Key Snacks, which you see at Whole Foods everywhere. It's like one of the top selling products on all of Amazon. It's just this monstrously successful company. And then he just started this other snack company called Unsupervised. He's always creating the next breakout brand. And he made the pivot from small entrepreneur to being one of the big guys, and yet still carries himself as if he is a humble, scrappy entrepreneur willing to help. I can't wait to have him on stage. The next entrepreneur that I'm excited to introduce you to is Nick Mares. Nick is one of the founders of Kettle and Fire, the bone broth company that you see all over the place. They've become a monstrous company. And they came out and grew so quickly. But this is the crazy thing. That business is like, 5 years old, valued at, I don't know, like $1 billion or something like that. Changed an entire industry. And the guy's 25. Now he's 25. He was like 7 when that company started. And so this young kid has built this enormously successful company. And that's just half of it. What's really interesting to me is Nick is working on a project right now that is gonna completely change the entire e-commerce game. And what's cool is he's gonna share it with our audience, and as a result, they're gonna kind of have like an early chance to benefit from this. So we're gonna unpack his success of building this breakout brand that built the category, but also we're gonna talk about where the puck is going and where the opportunities are going to open up for scrappy entrepreneurs like you and me. The next entrepreneur that I'm excited to bring to the stage is Moiz Ali. Moiz is the founder of Native Deodorant, and this was the first breakout acquisition in our industry. Native Deodorant was acquired by Procter & Gamble for $100 million, I think on the nose. And that was a new level unlocked in the e-commerce industry. This was a few years ago, but they bought Native Deodorant at a time when 9-figure valuations on small, scrappy companies like the ones you and I are building, they didn't get acquired by the big guys. And so Moiz has this ability to put himself in a position that is ahead of the rest of the marketplace. By the way, he sold that company when it was less than 2 years old. Can you imagine for a second having today starting a business and in approximately 2 years, you have $100 million in the bank? That's nuts. And Moiz has the ability to think about that type of scale at that type of speed. And the business never had 1,000 employees. I think they maxed at 7 people. That's crazy. And he didn't raise Silicon Valley type of money. He was scrappy like you and me. And it wasn't like he was running into the red, like he wasn't losing a bunch of money. They were profitable. He built a business the way that you and I do it. He built a business like he had his hands in the clay. He was bootstrapping it and just did it in a way that would make us in the grind entrepreneurs proud. And that type of a mindset does not usually get on the highlight reel. And Moiz has been on my podcast in the past. And every time he interacts with our community, he says, these are my people. This is who I am. And so to have him at this event while you're still in the grind of your business, can you imagine, what would you pay to look somebody in the eye who is exactly where you, or has been exactly where you are, but has also taken where you are to a 9-figure valuation? That's what we get to do at this event. That is so cool. It's so cool that somebody who has had a 9-figure exit is gonna go meet and shake hands and hang out with and sit around a campfire with other people who are like, hey, so I'm at 4 million. I'm at $500,000. I just launched. What advice do you have for me? And he sits around and tells you, and you get to just be in that presence where the expectation of the room is raised in a way that doesn't have ego, doesn't have posturing, doesn't have suits. We're just hanging out around a food truck and talking business. I can't wait to go to my own event. Isn't that cool? I'll tell you about one more entrepreneur that we're gonna have at the Capitalism Conference. It's Sam Parr. Sam was the founder of Hustle.co, which just recently sold to HubSpot for a bunch of money. What's interesting about Sam is he went into an industry that wasn't used to having businesses that broke out and then sold. He modernized an industry that was kind of still stuck in 2006. And Sam did it in a way that was consistently profitable and that was kind of the industry leader. And the way that he did it, and again, he had an email newsletter business. That's crazy. An email newsletter business that scaled and sold. And since it was an entrepreneurship newsletter, he saw all of this data and information of what was happening in the business landscape, what businesses were scaling and selling. And today, now that he's exited, he runs one of the biggest podcasts in the world. It's called My First Million, where he's looking again at all these opportunities in deal flow and new entrepreneurs, and he's seeing where the puck is going. So not only is Sam able to speak about going into industries that haven't been changed in a while and doing things differently, not only is he gonna be able to speak on how to take your business, your industry that's stuck and stale and help it grow to a point where it's mature enough and new enough to be acquired, but he's also able to speak from a place of here's what's coming, here's what's changing, here's what's going on in the marketplace, here's what investors are wanting to see, here are the new sectors and markets that I'm interested in, here's how I know a company is gonna break out. And that's that is the perspective that I wanted to get from Sam and why I invited him to speak at the Capitalism Conference. Hey, listen, good news. Since we recorded that, 2 additional entrepreneurs just got added to the lineup. The first is Derek Halpern. If you recognize that name, it's because he ran one of the biggest podcasts ever in the business and entrepreneurship space, and then he just disappeared, just fell off the face of the earth, never to be heard from again until CapCon 5. But what Derek has been doing quietly in the background is he's been building a brand that is doing extraordinarily well. And I'm fascinated by this because I know that there's so many marketers and internet entrepreneurs that if they were to take their skill set and apply it to a real business, they'd, go into the Derek Halpern sphere. And that's what Derek says. He's like, I had this skill set of being a marketer and I had a big podcast, but I was wasting my time and my energy. And so I started over at zero and built a brand. And now it's doing extremely well and it's growing by leaps and bounds. He's crushing his previous success. So this is gonna be exceptionally exciting for those of you who are feeling like you have the skill set, but it's not being put to the best use. You know how to get followers, or you know how to market things, or you know how to sell on Amazon, but you're not building something that has real scalability. Derek's the guy you need to meet. Plus, he's a hoot and a half. He's just like funny as hell. You really need to come meet this guy. I don't know that he's done public appearances in the last several years. He's gonna be coming down to the Capitalism Conference. Also, we just confirmed Brooke Castillo, one of my best friends. Brooke originally couldn't make it, and then her schedule changed, and now she's available. Brooke has a $50 million per year coaching business, and it's all mindset to her. To her, it is just like breaking down the beliefs that say we can't, switching them, and then you line up behind what you want. Every time I talk to Brooke, I legitimately think I can do anything. Brooke Castillo and I are gonna hang out, probably do a Q&A and a fireside chat at the Capitalism Conference. And like hanging out with her will be worth your trip alone. So that's a little bit about what you're gonna see at the Capitalism Conference this year. And I hope you'll come and join us. And if you can't make it, I'm sure we'll do some of the clips here on the channel. So make sure you subscribe to this one. We'll probably put some of the clips out on social media as well. My experience with events is that the keynotes are cool. They're part of the reason why your brain justifies that you should go. But really it's the people that you meet at the event that end up changing everything. My first event that I ever went to, I met my mentor, who is still my mentor to this day, more than 10 years later. And I also met my business partner that I built and sold a company with. So check this out, like that business partner and I built a company, sold it. I don't know how much money we made together when you factor in profits and salary and all this stuff. Let's just say it's $20 million. I paid $2,000 to go to that event in 2009. I paid $2,000 and met a person that I made $20 million with. What's that ROI? That's like, I actually think that's 1,000,000% ROI from going to one event, one relationship. Not to mention the insights and the mindset shift I had and all of that. So I'm so excited to be able to do that for other people and myself. I just hold the event that I want to have, and I participate like everybody else. So if you miss it, make sure you're subscribed to get the clips. Also, go follow those people because they're really insightful and they can help you on your journey. And I hope to see some of you this year at CapCon. Thanks for watching. See you next time.